and welcome to the ESCAPUZZLED podcast, your one-stop shop for all things escape room, immersive and tabletop games. Today you are joined by me, that's Helena, Corey, my fabulous co-host.
Hi.
And not only that, we are also joined by Phil Harris, one of the co-owners of Pier Pressure in Brighton, opening in March 2018, having now expanded to 2 venues, and also hosts 7 rooms, including Tea Party, Smuggler's Secret, Modravina, Raver Quest, Loot the Lanes, Pavilion Perplex, and Broken. Hello, welcome, Phil.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How are we doing? You well?
I'm very well, thanks.
So how's business been going for Peer Pressure?
It's not been too bad. It's a bit lower than previous years, but I think that can be put down to football, to a lot going on this summer. Election as well will have an impact. But yeah, we're steady, we're strong, and there's a good number of people who still want to come play our escape rooms.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a lull before summer and then it goes crazy normally.
Yeah, we're always really quiet in May and June, and then about kind of now, middle of July, it will pick up again and should then be fairly strong through to the end of the year.
And there's never any warning either. It's just bam, you're fully booked. Good luck.
Exactly. Yeah.
You only wrote it yourself during this week. Ha ha ha.
Excellent. One thing that we like to do on the ESCAPUZZLED podcast to get to know our guests a little better is our escape room player profile. That is essentially some quick-fire questions for us to get to know you from an escape room player perspective. So one of the things that we put on our website a little while ago was our player stereotypes. We think there's about 10. There's definitely more because we've had a conversation with guests and they've added some extra ones about the different stereotypes that we find within an escape room environment. That's things like the explorer, the organized one, the leader, the scaredy cat. So what would you say is your stereotype in an escape room?
I've had a look at these. I think there's a bit of me that's the leader. I think there's a bit of me that's the explorer. I do get particularly excited about a very, very good set or scenery. And then there's a little bit of me that's the competitive one as well. It doesn't always come out, but there are certain people that we play with that bring out the competitiveness in me. And I'm pretty sure we still hold a few records here and there.
I mean, that's always the best way to be. I feel like you need that little bit of competitiveness just to sort of get you out of the room in a semi-decent time. Can you really call yourself an enthusiast if you're not coming out super competitively?
Well, I think lots of enthusiasts really don't care about time. We see it a hell of a lot, that often we'll chat to our guests as they arrive in our reception area and we'll get to know them a little bit, and then we'll go and speak to our game host and we're running our game and we go, oh, don't you worry, they're enthusiasts. You're going to have a nice, easy ride. Won't need many clues. You'll probably have 20 minutes spare at the game so you can go grab a sandwich or something. And then after they've been there for 65 minutes, the host will come back and go, well, it was easy. They didn't want many clues, but they took their time. And I think it's quite a nice way of doing things. You will really, really appreciate it. And especially for me, I do, like I said earlier, I do nerd out a bit on how things are made and the beauty of some people's creative set design. And if you want to really enjoy every inch of that, especially like if you want to enjoy the puzzles with your team. So, when you play competitively and you're trying to get a good time, each person's taking a puzzle and you're just flying through them. But I do also really like playing with Philly, my wife, where we just take our time. And if one of us solves a puzzle the other one hasn't seen, we don't just, ignore it. We go, oh, come and have a look at this. This is what I did. This did this. And then that opened that. And it's a different way of playing.
Yeah, I definitely always try to get everybody together if I sense something cool is on the horizon.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always best to sort of experience everything. But yeah, I think there's definitely those two sides to enthusiasts. There's the ones that want to get it done quickly and get a good time, but still enjoy the room. And there's the ones that want to really savor the set design and play with all the cool gadgets and toys in the room.
Absolutely, yeah.
So on the back of you really enjoying the set design,
yes.
So what is your favourite theme that you've encountered?
I think my favourite themes are themes that either I don't expect or I don't see much of. So I'm finding it hard to pick what my absolute favourite is. Yeah, I really like seeing things I don't expect. So sometimes you'll start a game and they advertise it as a particular theme, and then you'll go through into room 2 and all of a sudden you realise that there's a big twist in the narrative and they're taking you on a completely different adventure to the one that you probably expected. And I really love that. I think one I'm thinking of in particular, it was going underground in Vienna, literally starting a shop, then all of a sudden you are literally underground. Do you know what? I'm not going to give too much away.
Spoiler alert.
So yeah, surprises I like, and I really like originality. I'd say outside of those, in terms of themes that you do see quite frequently, I think one of my favorites is where people have done really good sets that are meant to be outdoors, but they've done it indoors, obviously. So an enchanted forest or like a secret garden type theme. Like if done well, they're really, really spectacular sets. If you've got trees and foliage, and sometimes you might have a little pond or a bit of a water feature, always think that makes a really beautiful set.
I do love to see water in an escape room. It's a brave choice, but when
I'm
done
always
correctly,
scared of
it's
it.
very cool.
It is a brave choice. Yeah, it's one we've not done a great deal of. It does look really cool.
I did a game, I can't remember what it was, and it had a water feature in it, and you actually had to go into the water feature for something.
Absolutely drenched by the end of it.
Yeah, like it was like a tiny water feature, so it wasn't a massive one, but I was also like, why is there running water? And looking at it going, oh my god, this could be tipped over so easily.
Yeah, that just adds to the realistic nature of the room if the room's flooded as well.
Yes, I suppose. It would be even better if it was like a submarine game, but no, it was like a CSI game, I think.
On the flip side of that, what is your least favourite theme?
On the same theme that I really enjoy games and themes that I've not seen before, I think probably my least favourites are just ones that I've done loads of times before. So, and it is a bit sad because I did enjoy them initially, but I think probably the biggest one for me at the moment would be Pirates. And it's not that they're particularly unexciting sets. We've just played so many pirate games. They kind of get a little bit samey, a little bit tropey. And I think kind of when you're creating immersive puzzles and you're thinking about, oh, what might there be on a pirate ship? You know, you could have 20 people come up with different puzzles and they'll probably end up with fairly similar things because you're reasonably restricted with the items that you might find there. So that's probably the one that, you know, if we were going somewhere, I would tend to avoid because I feel like I've done it.
That has been an incredibly common answer across the board, Pirates.
Is it?
Pirates and
Yeah.
Sherlock tend to be the most common sort of themes that are least favorited, and again for that reason that they tend to be overdone. We always say it would be nice to see a pirate themed game where you're not on the pirate ship.
Yeah, but do you know what? I do completely get why Escape Room owners do it because commercially speaking, it's a really, really popular theme, especially if you're trying to target the demographic of kids or kids' parties or families. You know, your kids are going to want to be on a pirate ship. So I do expect that those places that have pirate games, they're probably one of the most popular ones. But I think as enthusiasts, it's a bit different when you're trying to get around and play as many as you can. Then it becomes a bit less exciting.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not to say that pirate games can't be great. Like,
No,
there's some
not at all.
absolutely phenomenal ones.
Yeah, Mutiny at Tully's, the one at Escapement is superb. Yeah, there's loads of great ones. I've done one in Budapest as well that was phenomenal. You started like on a harbour and you could see an actual ship. So the set was amazing. But
Oh, that's really
I
cool.
can name 3 really, really good ones I played, but I've probably played, I don't know, 10, 20, something. And there's quite a few, especially kind of some of the low budget ones that are just, yeah, a bit basic.
We actually had Pirate Escapes in Whitley Bay on.
Oh no, it's not
No,
like
months
not
ago.
now, am I? Oh,
No, not at
No, we
all.
had this conversation with them as well.
We brought this up with them of like a lot of experienced escape players won't go for a pirate game, but actually we got him on because I wouldn't go for a pirate game, but I've done all of his games because they are really good and I've really enjoyed them. And I've recommended them to anybody who's done a lot of escape rooms, especially in the northeast. It's like 20 minutes away from Newcastle, but it's out of the city centre. And go and play a Pirate Escapes.
Rumination in Mid Wales as well is another excellent pirate game. I just thought I'd add that in.
Every time we have guests on and they leave recommendations, I mark it down on my phone and my bank is slowly crying.
Yeah, every time he adds anything, it goes.
Yep. In-person escapes and tabletops, absolutely draining my bank at current, but it's good. I can't complain.
So, for my favourite question, I have found new locks that I would never have known about from this question. What is your favourite kind of lock?
Do you mean like favourite padlock?
Yeah, it can be your favourite padlock, your favourite way of unlocking things. If you've built a different kind of lock and you're like, this is cool, people need to know about it, let us know about it. Mine is a cryptex because I just like the look of them, or like a directional lock because they are so much fun and I like the sound of them.
But things like maglocks and stuff like that also count.
For us, it's definitely electronic. We're not huge fans of padlocks. We do try and avoid using padlocks in most of our games. We've got a couple in there, but on the whole, we try to use electronics. We try to vary it a lot. So I'm really struggling to say what my favorite is, but we do use a lot of reed switches, which are the ones that can be triggered by anything magnetic. We use a lot of just toggle switches, buttons, RFID chips as well. What's my favorite? I think to me, the bigger excitement is in the reveal of what's next. So rather than what the particular opening mechanism is, it's then how the next thing is presented. So I really like things that might, pop up in the air on gas struts, or have a really nice reactive lighting that will point you towards something, or be responsive, that as you complete something, you've got very clear feedback, something will go green, and, a nice sequence like that.
It's that nice little dopamine hit with the immediate gratification of unlocking something. It just feels so good.
Or like a door sliding out the way very quickly. It always excites me.
Love
I'm
a
like,
sliding door.
ooh.
Sliding doors are great.
I feel like anything that's just sort of magical gives you that slight little split second out of reality where you go, maybe I am actually in a castle or a submarine. Or
Actually, you know what? I will give my favourite. I've thought. So we've got one game, and again, I don't want to give spoilers out, so you might have players that haven't played anymore. So I won't say which one. I'll just say we have one game where we have multiple panels opening at once, and they're all on maglocks, and they all drop down using gravity. And when they all open at the same time, which they do, they create the most enormous bang. Regularly, 2 times out of 3, we'll get screams out of the team. So not only have they completed something and they've progressed to the next section of the game, but they also have this massive, psychological rush of something very unexpected has just happened, and they've been a little bit scared out of their skin, but at the same time, they're very excited for what's inside.
I feel like if I'm not anticipating it, I'd probably fold like a deck chair.
Yeah, actually, I have done that on multiple occasions. Just hit the deck.
On the flip side, what would you say is your least favorite puzzle?
Probably smells or tastes.
Oh, that's been said a lot now. Smell and
Yeah.
tastes.
I think a lot of people use them because you want to try and be clever, and you want to try and say, oh, we're testing all of your sensors here. But as a standalone puzzle, it's a bit naff, isn't it? Here, eat some jelly beans. Which one's coffee? Which one's mint?
I know exactly which puzzle and exactly which room you're talking about there as well.
Oh, I wasn't actually thinking of a specific one like that.
Oh, okay.
It's been used a lot. I've been to many, many places that do the jelly bean thing, or, or have various smells. We've used smells once before as well, where we had a pop-up that we wanted to try and keep to a really low budget, and it is quite impactful as a relatively cheap way of setting a puzzle up. I don't love them. And then the other one that I really don't like is, I don't know what the proper word for them would be, but the kind of object sliding ones, you get the little plastic kids puzzles in party bags.
Like a big sliding jigsaw.
Like a big sliding jigsaw, exactly. And there's always one that's empty, and you have to just move them one tile at a time. Yeah, I really hate those.
I mean, I hate those in general, but put it in an escape room.
They're just a time sink, aren't they? They're not. It's not fun to solve. You just know you're going to be sat there for 10 minutes trying to move them around. I'm sure there is a technique to them, but
Yeah,
Panic is the correct way to do it.
a time sinking puzzle. I think there's a lot of that stuff, like trying to get a hoop over one of those like twisty bars without touching the wire.
Oh, like
That's
a
a massive
wire thing.
Yeah, that's a huge time sink. And jigsaws, that's my least favorite, is jigsaws. Okay, so you are an explorer in an escape room. What is your biggest strength that you would bring to your escape room team?
Experience.
Okay, I like that. How many escape rooms roughly do you think you've done?
Somewhere over 200. I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, we're somewhere over 200. I've just had a suggestion from my partner in crime who's sitting next to me. She said my biggest asset is persistence, apparently.
Okay.
Don't give up.
Perseverance is a big one in escape rooms. I feel like a lot of people, as soon as they can't figure out a puzzle, they sort of shy away from it or go in a huff and try something else. But sticking at a puzzle is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
And especially when you can do like multiple things at once, and you can kind of walk away from that really hard puzzle that you don't want to do. Both me and Corey do, and then we're like, we've actually got to solve this puzzle now.
So that's probably my strength then. I'd probably be the one to tackle that. I'd be like, if no one else is going to do it, I'll do that one that no one else wants to do.
Can you join our team? Thank you.
Normally the big sliding jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, you can crack on with that. Have fun.
As an alternative, apparently I'm always a negative Nancy on this podcast. What would you say is your biggest weakness in an escape room?
I probably get a bit controlly at times.
Okay, so taking on that leader role.
I'll barge my 5-year-old son out of the way and take over the shooting of things because he's rubbish at it.
We've heard that from a lot of parents. I feel like it's one of those things. There's a fine balance between enjoying a room and letting your children enjoy the room.
There is a particular example I'm thinking of, which when I relate back to people, it's a hilarious story, but at the time I found it very stressful. But we do love playing with our kids, and they're a bit young at the moment, but we're training them up. And we played, funnily enough, a pirate game recently where there was a nice little kind of shooting range type thing. And obviously the lad wanted to have a go and he had plenty of goes. And then I looked up at the TV, at the screen, and I was like, actually, we've not got that much time left in this room. Because it always takes us longer when we're playing with the kids. We try to get them involved. We try to, explain what we're doing. We don't just rush through and let them sit in the corner playing with a padlock. So yeah, I did notice that we only had like 6 or 7 minutes left in this game. And I pretty much had to just snatch the gun out of his hands and go, no, I've got to do it. We've not got much time left. So that wasn't very nice, but we did manage to get through in time. So it was needed.
It's all for the greater good. So, I mean,
Exactly.
It's fine. How did the child take it in that situation?
Oh, he wasn't happy. No.
I can imagine there was tears. I would cry.
He's over it now.
Okay. You just really hope that those moments aren't like forever replaying in their brain. That time that my dad stole a gun from me.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty more opportunities to redeem that in an escape room environment.
Next time I'll let him have another go.
And then steal it again.
Yeah.
So, if you could pick your dream team, who would be on your dream team? So, this can be people who are dead, alive, they can be celebrities, or it can just be that you actually just want an hour with like your favorite human being on this planet. Who would that be, and who would be on your team?
My dream team for escape room team, well, it has to include Philly, my wife, no doubt.
Okay.
Then I want a couple of brains to help through because, it would be a bit embarrassing if I was there really enjoying these fun people's company, but they were just looking to me to solve all the puzzles. So I'm going to go with Stephen Fry. But then I don't want it just to take it too seriously, so I'm also going to bring Eddie Izzard along just for the laughs.
Okay. Some pretty solid choices there.
Yeah.
Both practical and fun.
Exactly.
Which not a lot of people have chosen in the past. Everyone's gone for straight fun. Zero practicality.
Yeah, we were all like the celebrities we want to meet. So
there you go. That's my little streak of competitiveness.
So we've got Eddie Izzard, Stephen Fry, and who was Brian Cox?
Brian Cox, yeah.
Oh, I feel like he'd just float through the room and just
He
be like
would, wouldn't he?
super calm, and then be like, "Oh, those stars. This is the explanation for that." And just from the corner, being like, "Wow,
If there was
what an incredible position."
If there was a puzzle where you had to identify constellations or something like that, he wouldn't even need the signpost. He wouldn't need the chart.
Yeah.
Just look up and go, right, that's the answer. Here's the code. Pop it in the
And
padlock.
he'd do it so calmly. That man has him and Stephen Fry, I think, would make me the worst person to have in an escape room because I go to sleep to their voices. I went and watched the Mythios trilogy by Stephen Fry, and he was reading it, and I've accidentally, from like a really young child, I have like conditioned myself to go to sleep to his voice. So I was like in the theater, like both me and my husband nudging each other to like keep ourselves awake. we were just like dropping off to sleep, listening to Stephen Fry. Pavlov dogged myself. Just listening to those guys.
You conditioned yourself.
But I'm sure they'd be really good in an escape room, or I'd hope.
I feel like it would be really enjoyable to have Brian Cox narrate an escape room.
Yeah, that's what my brain's doing.
That would be good.
Would be absolute bliss. Like a space station themed escape room with Brian Cox on the tannoy would be surreal. Brian Cox, if you're out there, we've got an idea.
Yeah, and actually, you just come and talk to us while
If
we
you're
have
listening.
naps. Thanks.
So obviously you guys have done a lot of escape rooms and you've been in the escape room industry for quite a while in the UK. What made you move into escape rooms and how did you get into them?
Well, honestly, we had only played 2 escape rooms when we decided that it's what we wanted to do. And the first one we played was not all that exciting. It was pretty basic. We didn't really immediately get the bug. And then we did a second one about a year later. And I think that really showed us how different games can be. And then it wasn't only that, but the second one we did, we got chatting to the owner there, and he was just sort of explaining a bit about the industry, and he was telling us that, you know, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have several in a particular city. This one we went to was in Southampton. He was telling us there was already 5 or 6 in Southampton. You know, this is back in 2017. So it really made us kind of look a bit more into it. And even though there were 3 existing companies in Brighton, it kind of encouraged us that that isn't necessarily a bad thing. Because I had heard about them years before, knew some people I used to work with that actually got involved in some very, very early ones in terms of building and owning them. And so I was kind of aware of the existence, and it sounded like a fun thing to me, but I had previously looked online and gone, oh, there's already 2 in Brighton, so, you know, that's game over. I can't now therefore do an escape from Brighton. But then this gentleman that we spoke to, who was telling us about how that isn't an issue, kind of inspired us. So when we got in the car to go home after playing that second one, we just started the conversation, Philly and I, if you could design an escape room, what theme would you design? And I'm not exaggerating when saying that conversation just didn't stop and hasn't.
Still going to this date.
We're still talking about the same things. So yeah, and it was, you know, from that conversation, I called up the people that I knew that had involvement. I got a few really useful pieces of advice, and we started looking at premises pretty much immediately. And because both of us had backgrounds that really helped, really lent itself to opening an escape room. So my background was in events and entertainment. I did a lot of production design in big corporate events in London. And Philly's background was as an academic in psychology. She's got a PhD in psychology. So Dr. Philly is the clever one that will think of all the puzzles, and she spends a lot of time thinking about the flow of people and how they'll be thinking, how they'll be reacting, which is really, really wonderful. It's a great asset for us to have. And I spend my time focusing on how we're going to build the sets and the puzzles and pulling all that together.
I would love to read a book on the psychology of escape room players. My background's in magic and magic consulting, and there's a book specifically about the psychology of performing magic to lay people and what they think and what they expect, and it's such an interesting read.
Yeah.
Well, after doing a bit of a Google, you definitely got the best name in Brighton.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Peer Pressure is so cool.
So good.
I do love a pun.
We nearly didn't go with it, and that's because when we were trying to think of a business name, I kind of quite adamantly said that I didn't want a business name that you had to spell over the phone. Because I'd worked in companies before where I just found it so tedious and so frustrating that every time that you wanted to give your email address or your website over the phone, you have to be, so that, spell that, da, 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 da. So we did think of Peer Pressure quite early into the thought process, and I just dismissed it. And then we went down a whole different route and then came back to it and went, oh yeah, no, that is the best name.
What were some that you were like, oh, actually, that's a really good one, but we're not going to use it?
Oh, I can't think of them now. It was 7 years ago.
Yeah, I guess it was a long time ago.
Peer Pressure is such a unique and fun name for where you guys are, especially, but it made it an absolute nightmare for research purposes, because typing in Peer Pressure Brighton, I just got like peer pressure in football teams and children peer pressuring people to do other stupid things. And yeah, it was a nightmare to try and find some of your earlier stuff.
Yeah, I guess all the tabloids will use it if the football team's under pressure. Oh, yeah.
Under peer pressure, I guess.
Under peer pressure,
Yeah.
So how did you decide on your current games and like themes? Is there something that you used from where you are? What produced the games that you currently have?
Yes, we made a very conscious decision at the very beginning that we wanted all of our games to be themed around local themes, because we really, really love the city we're from. We really love Brighton, and it does have quite a cool image, I think, not just in the local area, but people travel a lot from London and the home counties to visit Brighton on a fairly regular basis. So we just really wanted to lean into that and, try and appeal to the millions of people that visit Brighton each year, to, I guess, kind of differentiate us from the rest. And it gave us a little bit of a USP, and it also, I think I found it quite helpful when we kind of wanted to then think about which theme was going to come next, that we had a slightly restricted pot that we were picking from, because we wanted it to be roughly themed around Brighton. I mean, you'll probably notice that we did slightly err from it towards the more recent ones, because we dropped it a little bit and started thinking a bit more commercially. But there is still essences of Brighton in all of our games.
It's so nice to have a local twist on things, because not only are you getting this fun and enjoyable experience, but you're getting a little bit of a history lesson without noticing,
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
always nice.
Yeah, I think the one that we see that most often in is with Modrafenia, which is a Mods and Rockers themed game. It's kind of loosely themed around the Quadrophenia film, which was an 80s film set in the 60s. And I think most sort of people of my generation, especially those being brought up in Brighton, they'll have at least a rough idea what the kind of Mods and Rockers were. But actually, most people coming through to us now have never heard the term. And we take quite a lot of joy in just giving them a really brief 30-second introduction to the subcultures and a little bit of history behind it, which is quite fun.
So obviously you have a multitude of different themes, as you mentioned, focused around sort of local theming within your area. But one of your more notable games is Loot the Lanes, which has recently been commended by TERPECA as one of the top escape rooms, not only in the UK, but also in the world. What do you think makes a world-renowned escape experience?
Yeah, we've been absolutely blown away by the response we've got at Loot the Lanes. I think that particular game really put us on the map. For 3 years running, we were the highest ranked UK game in the TERPECA rankings. And then we haven't been for the last 2 years, but we did have it 3 years in a row, which was just mind blowing. And we never really expected it. Obviously, we've tried to dissect so many times about what makes Loot the Lanes so great and what makes it so popular. And I definitely think that where it's been so successful from and where it's been so popular from is we just do each individual element of the game very, very well. Because I would definitely say it's not the best game for puzzles you'll ever play in your life. It's not the best game for set you'll ever play in your life. It's not the best game for theatrics you'll ever play in your life. But it does all of those things to a very high standard. And I think that's what people love about it, that we have put in quite a high attention to detail. There's a really nice bit of theatrics at the very start of the game, which was just completely by, I wouldn't say by accident, but it came from where we ended up getting this space that actually is a little bit down the road from our main venue. We managed to sublet a basement in a cafe at a time when we had already filled all of our other rooms. But because it's only quite a small space, we still get all the customers to go to our main venue and we walk them down the road. And just that little act that was not planned, really, it just came from where we ended up being, turns it into a really, really fun start to the game, because all of our hosts love to get into character. We have some really wonderful actors. The character that we picked that hosts Loot the Lanes is really just kind of a quirky aristocrat type character, which every actor will say is a really, really fun character to play. And they just have so much fun with it. And, they're leading the teams. It's less than a 2-block walk, so it's a really short walk. But they lead the teams down the road. You're out in the open air, and they're just being silly. And it just means that when you get into that game and you get down into this basement of this cafe, already you're in such a great mood. And then you walk in the room and the set we've built is amazing. Like, I think it's absolutely spectacular. And I can say that because, we use wonderful carpenters. It wasn't me. So you've had this lovely start. You've really got into the theme of the game because the actor's having a great time. You're having a great time. And then you walk into a room which is completely unexpected because you've just gone through a bit of a hipster cafe. You walk into a really spectacular set and you're in a street scene with real cobbled floors. And then you're into the puzzles, and I think the puzzles are very strong, but you're just already in such a great mood that you're just going to keep that high going for the game. So yeah, I think that's kind of my answer, that it doesn't do one thing better than anyone else. It just does lots of things very, very well.
It seems to build perfectly on one another. Like, you're constantly adding to those layers, so the player's constantly getting this ramped up experience.
Yeah, exactly.
I've yet to play Loot the Lanes, unfortunately, but I do intend on getting down to Brighton as soon as possible to play it. But from the pictures that I've seen, the set design is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, we've been really, really lucky that we had a wonderful team of carpenters and set builders that it was all an in-house team. We sort of cobbled together some local guys, but they, done an absolutely fantastic job.
Quite literally cobbled together.
Yeah.
Were all of those cobbles like handmade?
No, I do have to admit those cobbles were actually already there when we moved in.
Oh, no way.
Wow.
That's really cool.
I know, it would be cooler if we said that we added them because it is quite an impressive feature. But no, we, back in 2019, thank you, Philly, 2019, we had filled up this space of the premises that we had got and business was going really, really well. We were selling out frequently. So I just kind of started putting the word around, especially on the local street, just to see who had some space. And then all of a sudden and the owner of the cafe walked in and went, "Oh yeah, I've got this basement. Some guys have just moved out of it. I was thinking of turning it into a gym bar, but if you want it, talk to me." And then we walked in and it already had a cobbled floor. And
Oh.
we had sort of planned that our next game would be set in Brighton's lanes, which for those people not familiar, it's a really lovely area of Brighton that has very narrow pedestrian streets with wall-to-wall shops and cafes. It's just a really lovely area. And we had planned that our next game would be set in the lanes area. We had thought before about doing something, you were breaking into a jeweler's, but there was lots of alarms going off and you had to stop playing. But anyway, that all got chucked aside as soon as we saw this space and we saw the floor, and we're like, brilliant, we can do a street scene. And it just made it. It really makes it, that cobbled floor.
I find it so cool when people, like you mentioned earlier, take an outdoor scene and put it indoors, like a cobbled street, or as you mentioned earlier, a forest. Like, you just don't expect it and it catches you so off guard.
Yeah, I find really interesting is we've added so much more impressive tech to some of our new games, so much more complicated, like I said earlier, dynamic lighting or responsive lighting, that's all controlled, and a lot more electronics, but none of those have had the same impact that the Lanes have had. So it really shows that it's not just about what tech's in the game, but it's just about the real core of it, the spirit, and how it makes you feel.
When you were getting those sort of awards from TERPECA and getting the recognition that comes with it, did you try to then look at, obviously, as you mentioned earlier, you looked at the game and try to replicate it. Did you find yourself trying to replicate it as much as possible, or?
No, we've dissected it a lot, but I wouldn't say that we've tried to replicate it, because we've only actually done, to be fair, we have done 3 permanent games since Loot the Lanes, but in every one of them, we were very restricted with how much space we had. And one of the things that Loot the Lanes is so great about is it is a nice big space that opens out into lots of different areas. So we've not really tried to recreate Loot the Lanes because we haven't had the space to do so. If we had had that space, then yeah, absolutely, we would have look to have done exactly the same format, because it clearly works.
So having some incredible rooms for adults and enthusiasts, you took a different approach with your Smuggler's Secret room. How did you adapt your usual practices to better suit a younger audience?
Yeah, so we, pretty much from the day we opened, we had been getting all kinds of requests for kids' parties, or, lots of questions about what age range it was suitable for. And when we opened the business, appealing to kids just wasn't on our radar whatsoever. We hadn't even considered it as a thing we might do. We were both adults without kids, and especially from my background in events, I really saw the potential with it as a team building and corporate bonding type place. So we were very, very strict at the start that all of our games were either ages 12 plus, or some of them even ages 14 plus. But then we just saw how much demand there was for younger audiences to come play escape rooms. Like, it clearly trickled down in those few years from when we opened. They'd become more and more ingrained in society, I guess, and a bit more mainstream. And now kids were asking for them for parties. So yeah, we did take a slightly different design approach to our most recent 3 games, that all of them we've made accessible and suitable for 8+. So what does that involve? We are very conscious when we're setting the rooms up themselves about the height positioning on walls. We want to make sure that nothing that the players need to reach is going to be too high for an 8-year-old. I mean, 8-year-olds aren't that small, so it's not too much of a stretch. Hey, that's another unintended pun. And to be honest, there's lots of adults at the same height as 8-year-olds. So it's probably something we should have done anyway. But it wasn't just that. What we started doing was having 2 different difficulty modes in our games. And we've done this for the last couple. Actually, we've done it for more than a couple, because we've done it on games we've designed for other people as well. So we've probably designed about 5 games now that have what we call a family-friendly mode and a pro mode. And really, it's just easy and hard, but we just call them by slightly nicer names. So in the family-friendly mode, we always look at all of the puzzles and we think about which ones kids might struggle with. I'm not saying kids are dumb, because they're definitely not. Kids are very, very smart in escape rooms, but we do notice trends of what they will do and what they won't do. And one thing they won't do is read long chunks of text. They'll be far, far too excited in the game to actually read something and decipher it and work out what to do. They love doing things, they don't really like thinking about why or how. So we have adapted our games so that in all of the family-friendly modes, there's just a little bit of a simplification of puzzles. On some occasions, we skip puzzles entirely in the family-friendly mode. So we use cogs as the software behind all of our games, and it's just really easy to set within that, if they're in family-friendly mode, then this cupboard will open when they solve a puzzle, but if they're in pro mode, then a different one will. And so sometimes we have exactly the same puzzle twice in a game, one with a more complicated version, one with a simpler version, and our games host can, on the fly, choose which one they're giving to the players.
What?
That's really cool.
It's really cool, and it gives us a really nice degree of control over the difficulty of the game. And like I said, we can change it on the fly. It doesn't have to be just set from the start. Very often we'll get families with little kids, and we'll start them off in family-friendly mode, and they will be flying through it, absolutely smashing it. So, within 15 minutes, we'll go, no, they're getting full pro mode, and we give the harder puzzles to them, which is great. It's a really lovely ability that we have.
That's awesome.
It's really cool to think that people are going into these games and not realizing that there's like half the puzzles just sneakily hidden away just in case.
Exactly.
That's such a crazy concept. And again, like you mentioned, cogs are absolutely phenomenal for making those kinds of things super easy to do and super accessible for owners.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to do it without it, really. We are huge fans of cogs, big proponents, and it really did change our world. So we had one of our games was on cogs version 1, very, very old, and it really helped the game, and it helped us create quite a complex use of tech. But in cogs version 1, you couldn't really adapt it yourself. So anytime we wanted small changes, we had to go back to them, and it was a little bit faffy. But it was only when the more recent version of cogs was released, where everyone can create all of their own logic, and anyone can do it, that it really, really changed our world, because we're pretty experienced puzzle designers, but we had no developer background between us. We didn't have anyone on our team who could write a single line of code. So having that ability to do that ourselves and create electronic things ourselves was such a game changer. Our first 5 games were originally all run on completely different systems. We had 5 different systems. We had loads of Arduinos, loads of Raspberry Pis, but if anything went wrong with them, which they frequently did, we didn't have a clue what to do. And then changing everything over to cogs, which we've done over the last couple of years, it's made everyone's life so much easier.
Yeah, it sounds like a logistical nightmare, especially running off 5 different things for each of your rooms. It's just crazy.
Yeah, they all had their own quirks.
Quirks is definitely the best way to put it. I can imagine it was more of an annoyance than a quirk, but obviously technology's used a lot more in games nowadays, and I think making the access to technology easier only sort of helps the industry go forward. Plus, it also irons out some of those more difficult, as you say, quirks that you might find in a game.
Yeah, massively. I think you're absolutely right there. It is really good for the industry, because it means you no longer need enormous budgets to do some really cool electronic things in your games, which is great. And that's, what we should really be promoting for everyone to use. Bad escape rooms are the worst possible things for the industry. For people that kind of like us, we did our first escape room. We didn't think much of it. We didn't think of doing another one until a year later. And to be honest, we only really did that because we got bought a voucher. So people playing bad escape rooms that will make them have no interest in playing another one is, the biggest scourge for us.
Had you not have been bought that voucher, do you think you would have still gotten into the escape industry maybe at a later point? Or how do you think it would have changed things?
I don't know. Probably not. There was nothing in us that had any desire to do an escape room after the first one. We did one and we went, oh, that was cool. We had fun for an hour, but we kind of just thought we'd done it. We're like, oh yeah, we've done an escape room. That's it. That's something ticked off the list. Let's, go do something else. And I think if we hadn't been bought that voucher, we probably wouldn't be here today.
That's crazy. I mean, if that's not a reason to go out and buy your family and friends escape room vouchers, I don't know what is. So get yourself down to Peer Pressure at Brighton, buy your family and friends a voucher, and maybe they'll lead the industry forward.
Maybe it'll change their lives.
Exactly. But if you could go back to the start of your business and give yourself some advice or change something that you did, would you go back and change it? Or would you give yourself any advice? Or are you in the belief that everything happens for a reason?
Not necessarily. I think a definite piece of advice that I'd give to anyone setting up right now is use cogs, as we've already discussed. But that didn't really exist in 2017, certainly not in the way it does now. I think really the only things that we might do differently if we'd done stuff again would be not to stray too far from from the core of the business. So we have done a number of other things. We've tried doing other little businesses, other little side projects, and none of them have worked, well, really at all, but it's certainly anywhere to the scale of the success of the escape rooms. So we did at one stage open up a House of Illusions in Brighton, Paradox Place, not to be confused with Paradox Parlour, that are very good escape rooms in Guildford area. So we opened Paradox Place because we thought, we've created a pretty successful attraction in Brighton. Let's try doing something a bit different, but in a similar vein. And it was not a success. So we ended up closing the doors a couple of years later because we weren't really making ends meet. We've also tried a couple other little things. We tried doing escape room after school clubs as a little side project, but again, we found it really hard. The amount of work that we were putting into it did not equal the amount of revenue we were getting back out. So yeah, I think my advice to myself would just be stick with what we're really good at, which is building escape rooms, doing pop-ups. And we now also do a lot of design and build services for other escape rooms and other companies.
You guys have done a lot of sort of interactive environments for things like museums and places like that as well, haven't you?
That's right, yes. There's a historical house in Brighton, just outside the city centre. It's operated by the local museums trust. It's the same people that look after the Royal Pavilion, which is, beautiful royal palace. But the nice thing about this particular historical house is that it is not nearly visited enough. It's just not a popular attraction, especially because it's a little bit outside the centre of town. And obviously they're competing with themselves where they have this incredible royal palace, right in the centre. So it's a very fortuitous situation for us because they've basically turned around to us and said, whatever we want to do, we can do in there. So we've done quite a few different immersive experience, kind of escape room adjacent experiences, I'd probably call them, because we do always like to use escape room puzzles. It's what we've developed a good, strong brand and reputation for. So everything we've done in there has involved puzzle solving, but we've tried to make it more immersive. We've used more actors. We've been able to use the manor house, which is huge. It's a 30-room house, and there's about 15 or so of those rooms that they're quite happy for us to use. And they give us the whole manor for, whatever we need. I say they give it to us. Obviously, there's an agreement in place.
Handed over the deed.
Some money exchanges hands. But it's wonderful because we can do real big set stuff. The most recent game we've done there that was very successful, we did, let's call it our version of a popular board game.
A murder mystery board game that is nondescript.
But we've given out our own puzzle solving angle. But what's really lovely is that through the format of it, we can have multiple teams play at once, which I do appreciate for a player isn't quite the best experience, but for us trying to run a business and pay all of our overheads, it's really excellent commercially that we can have multiple teams playing at once. And the way we do it is we just spread the puzzles across loads of different rooms. We have all of the puzzles being self-resetting or not needed to be reset. And so we can have multiple teams just roaming around the manor house. We just ask them to not go into a room that another team is already in, but they can essentially solve the puzzles in whatever order they choose. And eventually they'll whittle down the suspects to hopefully find out who done it.
That's so cool. It is literally like a giant board game. You are walking around the board game itself.
Exactly.
It's very like Alice
in Borderlands.
Yeah, that's the vibe I'm getting from that.
Oh, I've not seen that. I shall look it up.
Oh my
It's a
goodness.
very cool Netflix TV show.
Okay.
You need to watch it. It's
Okay.
very escape room coded.
Ah.
You're like, oh, that's fun. It's all based on very traditional games. So it's like the game of cards. What else is there, Corey? God, there's so much going on in that game.
Absolutely all
Like
sorts in it.
tic-tac-toe.
It is a little on the darker side, but
Yeah,
it is enjoyable.
It's pretty grim, but it's like, oh, that's interesting how they've done that. And I really enjoyed it. I think there's like 2 different seasons of it, and I watched both.
There is 2 seasons. It's almost like Escape Rooms meets Squid Game.
Yeah,
vibes.
like Saw-ish. It's slightly horror, but
Thoroughly enjoyable.
yeah, really recommend it.
With the stuff that you've learned, obviously, within the escape industry and within the immersive place, is there a crossover when you come back from those immersive events that you then bring into your escape rooms? Are you looking to maybe add like actors and things like that, or is that not something you've sort of ventured towards just yet?
I think we try to keep the main permanent games as pretty standard fare. And there's a few reasons. Like, I think we try to keep things simple. So we do, for example, want all of our games to cost the same. And the second you start adding an extra actor, if there's going to be a live actor within the room that's not necessarily your host, then obviously the overheads go up, and so the ticket price would have to go up.
Yeah.
We do not want to deviate from having all of our core games as 60 minutes long, purely because we get a huge amount of big group bookings. We get a lot of corporate groups, we get schools, we get youth groups, sometimes birthday parties are huge. So we don't want to have to split people. If they come all arriving at the same time and they want to split into 4 or 5 teams, play different games, it would be a bit annoying if some of them were longer than others, if some were like 90-minute games. So we try to keep our core offering quite sort of standard, if you will. I mean, they're really fun games, but they are your typical 60 minutes in a certain space, blah, 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 move on. And so that's why we like using this historical house to try different things, because it gives us really, really interesting experience, which helps us for various other design work that we do. But it also keeps our core fair.
It sounds like you guys have these incredible rooms that you're packing out day in, day out, and then you have this other project that you can just sort of let your brain go wild.
Yeah, a little bit. We're very lucky.
If you had an unlimited budget to build an escape room, what would that escape room look like?
It would be huge.
Yeah. Just
Scale's a
massive.
big thing.
Really huge. You know, if we're talking unlimited budget, I think the route I would definitely want to go down, and I'm sure it would be a nightmare to design, but it'd be a lot of fun at the same time, would be, yes, you know, it being part escape room, part immersive experience, but have it so that it's not just a set path and that decisions can be taken along the way that might send you into different rooms or different areas that other people perhaps didn't get to see or when they played the game. You know, you could have 10 different rooms going off a central area, and they would have to make the storyline decisions that would take them down a different path, perhaps with multiple different endings. I think that would be a real dream. Completely impractical. I'd never actually build it because you'd need an enormous amount of space and budget, but you'd also be really restricting yourself if you're essentially building the content for about 5 different games that players can choose between, but really it's just one game, so you're probably not that likely to get many repeat customers. Then it would be a really, really stupid idea.
I mean, if you were able to somehow control the throughput so that each player was going into a different game on the same story, then maybe.
Perhaps.
But yeah, it would be a logistical nightmare.
But imagine how fun that would be.
Yeah, it would be. It's literally a create your own story game, but as an escape room.
That's got to be the dream, right?
Yeah, so if you could make that, I'd love to come play it. Thanks.
All right, cool. If you find the backers, we'll
No problem.
we'll partner on it.
I feel like everybody that we've sort of asked that question, they've either gone really outlandish with their choices and they've said things like Fort Boyard or something like that, but scale tends to be the biggest thing. Somebody said they would make an escape country and just buy out an entire country and turn it into an escape room.
I love that.
Which I feel like is a bit crazy and a bit far-fetched. But, I mean, not necessarily a huge country. You could get away with a smaller country, maybe.
Yeah.
A city-wide escape room, but where, like, there's multiple actors and things like that. That would be crazy.
Take over the Vatican. They've got plenty of secret tunnels already.
Oh, my goodness, imagine. That would be crazy. I'm sure there'd be a lot of regulations from the church as to what you could do within the Vatican and within the storyline of what you're doing there.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's now going into churches. I climb the church.
Yeah.
I can imagine there's probably an escape room in a church. Like, we've got one in the castle. So.
There's a nightclub in a church in Leeds.
Oh, that's incredible.
Which is wild. That's the complete flip side to the original venue intention.
Yeah, a lot of churches are now closing down, which is unfortunate because obviously it's a heritage thing. But also, I'm like, yeah, stick an escape room in that church. Why not? Let's make the Vatican a whole escape room.
So what are your plans for yourself and for the business in the future?
Yeah, quite a lot, actually. So we, like I mentioned a couple of times already, we've been focusing a lot on design and build services. So we've been designing and building sometimes full escape rooms, other times just individual props or puzzles for all sorts of different companies. We have installed a game at Centre Parks in Bedfordshire.
That's very cool.
We're looking at doing a couple of others this year as well. We've also done some other entertainment centres locally, and we've also supplied to quite a few existing escape room venues. So there is quite a big focus on that side of things at the moment for us to get that going to an even greater degree. We've recently moved into a dedicated workshop unit. Before, we were just operating out of a room within one of our venues, but we've now got a really nice big workshop with a fantastic team of artists and carpenters and technicians that make crazy things, which is a lot of fun. We've also got our first franchise venue opening this year in Hertfordshire, in Welwyn Garden City. That's also very, very exciting. It's going to be the first Peer Pressure game away from Brighton. They've actually been operating for about a year already now, but they don't have a premises yet. They've been doing a couple of pop-up games, and they took inspiration from what we do at our manor house, and they managed to find a local historical site that would allow them to do some similar format pop-up games. So there'll be quite a big focus by us on that, getting that up and running and getting that successful.
When that gets up and running, do you intend on creating completely new games, or are you looking to replicate some of the games that you already have in Brighton?
Yes, so we are creating completely new games. The whole franchise thing, they approached us essentially. It wasn't something that we sat one day and said, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to franchise ourselves. So these lovely people contacted us saying, you know, we've played quite a few escape rooms. Yours were the favourite that we played. So would you be interested in us becoming a franchise? And after many, many conversations, we all decided it was a really great idea. But there were some things that we were very kind of strict on from the start that we didn't want to be what a lot of the other franchises do, which is just a copy and paste venue from one town to the next without having its own real identity or spirit or flair. And so because our whole USP from the start was that our games would be Brighton themed, yes, we could sort of change the narrative a bit to put the same games into a different location, but we just didn't want to. We wanted those to be our games in Brighton that do attract people from all over England to come play them. You know, we've had people travel from Europe to Brighton purely to play our escape rooms. So we wanted to keep that going. So yes, they are developing their own games that, you know, we encourage them to pick themes that were related to their local area, and they're doing so under our BDI, but so far they've done a really fantastic job. You know, we said that we'll be there to help every step of the way. Not only that, but we did give ourselves the power of veto that if they chucking in puzzles or parts of their experience that we really didn't think were fitting in with our brand, then we would veto. But we've not had to use that, and I really don't expect that we will, because they really are on a very similar vibe to us. They've got some really lovely ideas, and pretty much everything they've put forward, we've just been like, yeah, fantastic, love it, great. So they're developing their own games. We're helping a little bit with the build, but it's going to be mostly them.
That's incredibly exciting. It must be pretty daunting letting go of the reins and putting your name on something, but if it's a company that you trust, then it certainly sounds like they are. It should be an absolutely incredible venture.
Yeah, I mean, we do trust them now that we've seen their designs. Obviously, at the beginning, we had no idea what they'd come up with, but it's already great stuff. Oh, and the other thing we're doing at the moment, and I know this goes against what I said earlier, that we shouldn't do more kind of escape room adjacent things, but we have partnered with a local teacher, and we've developed educational escape rooms as pop-up experiences to take into schools. So we've built one game as a bit of a pilot, although we have just kind of properly launched it, and we've done a game that tests students on their knowledge of GCSE biology, one of the topics, and we've built the puzzles, like really nice big set piece puzzle boxes, but they're all portable and individual items, so we can take them into schools, we can set it up for a day or for a few days, and we can have all of their GCSE biology students come and play the game. And we've had such wonderful feedback about it. So many teachers have been telling us they've just really struggled, especially due to budget cuts in schools, to make the science exciting and to make it a little bit more experiential rather than just classroom. So we've had a lot of positive feedback about that they get to go in, and we've done a bit of a silly sci-fi narrative to the game, but they have to use their knowledge of cells and transport and all of the other biology things I don't know to save the world.
There are so many cool school-based escape room things happening now, and I'm so frustrated that this didn't happen when I was at school. I wanted to do this back in the day. Like, this is crazy.
But it was really interesting design, that game, because it goes against all of the core principles of escape rooms, that you don't need outside knowledge to solve escape rooms. Yeah. And this is one that we had to design in a way that we had to test them on their curriculum knowledge that they're expected to know about, cells and transports. But luckily, that's why we partnered with a teacher on it who did most of the heavy lifting on that side of things.
Yeah, like, did you also have a lesson in biology because of this game?
I still don't understand most of it, and I've watched I've watched 10, 20 teams complete it, and if I was putting it, I'd still be like, ah.
Just for our owners listening, obviously you mentioned before that you have a lot of escape room building services. What sort of services do you offer if anybody's interested in getting in contact with you guys?
Get in touch with us. We will do most things. So yes, we have done full service of essentially giving us a space, and we've designed a game, built a game, installed the game, trained their staff, got it all up and running, made sure we're there for support. But also we get quite a lot of business that escape rollers will just come to us and say, look, we're building this new game. We want one really cool, exciting set piece prop that's a little bit beyond our own skill sets. And so can you just build a prop for us, or anything in between? We've also had owners come to us who have an existing game that say they feel like it's missing something. Can we go along, check it out, and maybe make some suggestions for some new puzzles? And so quite a wide range of consultancy services to do with designing or building or game flow or anything like that.
Perfect. So that leads perfectly into, where can our listeners find you?
Well, in Brighton, for a start. Yeah, obviously peerpressure.co.uk is our website. We're Peer Pressure Brighton on most social media networks. I can be emailed on phil@peerpressure.co.uk. And it's important for us to say we're not on the pier. We got this a lot when we first opened. We're not on the pier. No, we picked the name because it's a cool name. We're not actually located on Brighton Pier. I think only in our history, we've only had a couple of people call us from the pier going, where exactly are you? Because we do try and make it clear on our website that we're not there. But yeah, we are in the centre of Brighton, in the heart of Brighton.
Everywhere but the pier.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time today. I know you've got to get away super quickly for another meeting, so I appreciate you fitting us into your ever busy schedule. And it's been an absolutely incredible talk, and I can't wait to come down and actually play some of your games, especially with the lanes.
Look forward to hosting you. Yeah, get in touch.
As always, if you have enjoyed the podcast, please do give it a like or a rating on your favorite podcast platforms. If you want, you can go back and check out all of our other incredible guests, and we shall see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.